You're listening to the Armchair Cricket Podcast. Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Armchair Cricket Podcast. This is a podcast focusing on Test cricket by armchair critics of the game. As always, we would like to start by thanking all our listeners for their support. Please continue to listen to us and spread the word about our podcast to your cricket-loving friends. If you haven't done this already, please subscribe to our podcast on the platform that you listen to us on, be it Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, or anything like that. You can find us there by searching for Armchair Cricket Podcast quite easily. Do not forget to leave us a rating, preferably a 5-star rating, and leave your feedback. You can reach out to us by email. Our email address is armchair.cricket@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @armchaircrickpod. You can find us on Facebook. All these links are found in the description below. Now, we have a special feature today in this episode where a friend of the show and returning guest, Kanna, will join us. He will speak about some special performances during World Cups. Now, having said all that, it is time to welcome my co-host Ajit. Hello, Ajit. How have you been, my friend? Quite a while. It's been quite a while since we spoke last time.
Indeed. Hi, Giri. I'm doing all right. It's been a couple of hectic days at work. I think this will remain for the next few weeks, let me put it like that. But outside of that, indeed, it's been a while. And I'm happy that we've started this again. There was a bit of a lull, and so it should be, because in the upcoming few weeks, at least 5 to 6 weeks, I think we'll be very busy with cricket. So, it's also sort of right that we take a small break for ourselves.
Why not? Yeah.
Right?
Well, then, let's get cracking.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Let's go through the trivia question, right? So the trivia question from last week was, which player holds the record for the highest score at number 10 in tests, right? Batting in number 10 in tests. So It was sort of a tough question. I understand. I had given a hint that, it is one of those older records that has stayed in cricket, right? So, but I was not really surprised that we did not receive any right answers. But the answer is 117 scored by Walter Reed, batting at number 10 for England versus Australia in the 16th ever test match held at the Oval, right? In 1884. So it's back in the day, right? Mm-hmm. Well, in this test match, Australia batted first and they scored 551 in 311 overs, right? So this was those days where people took the time. So Australia had 300s in the top 4, and including a double 100 by the captain, Billy Murdoch of Australia. But then England tried as many as 10 bowlers, all 10 bowlers except the keeper bowled. And they struggled, clearly. And when it came their turn to bat, they were in a lot of trouble. The opener, Cotton, hit 90, but there were single-digit or double-digit contributions down the order. But they were in a lot of trouble at 8 for 181, right? When they lost their keeper, Honourable A. Littleton. But then number 10, Walter Reed, had different ideas because he stayed with the opener, and they together added nearly 150 runs to take England to 332, after which, of course, the opener Cotton was dismissed, but England finally became all out for 346. So, comparatively, if they had given a 300-run lead, probably the match was gone. They were made to follow on. They were still more than 200 runs behind. They were 205 runs behind. So Australia made them follow on.
Yeah.
But, England were able to bat out the remaining time in the match. And essentially, this basically made sure that the match was not lost. Let me put it like this, right? And as a result, England won the 3 test match series in 1884, right? 1-0. So this was a good occasion that, this was not only a match-saving innings, but also a series-saving innings as far as, this innings by Walter Reed was concerned.
Yeah.
So this is the highest, still remains the highest score by a number 10, one of those old records, what we discussed. All right. Going on, if you were to look at the World Cup news, some of the last teams to finalize their World Cup squad, Pakistan have announced their World Cup squad as well, Giri. Did you
Yeah.
notice this?
Yeah, I did manage to catch this. So there have been some interesting changes, right? So the initial squad contained some surprise choices, should I say,
Mm-hmm.
in the form of, let's say, Junaid Khan and Abid Ali. Abid Ali,
Yeah,
who did well in those, in those ODIs in UAE.
right.
Well, not surprisingly for some people, I mean, I think Faheem Ashraf has had a horrible run of form during the
Mm.
last few matches. He was conceding too many runs and he was not so effective with the bat. So,
Right,
considering
right.
these things, Inzam ul Haq has announced a change
Mm-hmm.
of squad. So, basically, three people have been replaced. So, we have bowlers Faheem Ashraf and Junaid Khan being replaced by Mohammad Amir, who has recovered successfully
Right,
from his chickenpox, little bout of chickenpox that he had in England.
right.
And then, well, it's a surprising inclusion for some because Faheem Ashraf. I spoke about Faheem Ashraf and Junaid Khan. So another inclusion is Wahab Riaz, the
Right,
age-old
right.
Wahab Riaz. Well, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how old he is. It's 34 or 35.
33, I think. But yeah, yeah,
33. Okay, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
No
so
slouching.
his inclusion is a bit of a surprise for some people. I think you mentioned offline that he had a good PSL tournament.
Yeah, yeah.
He showed some good form there. So he has been included, and Inzamam has said this that Pakistan will need the experience that's on offer in the form of Mohammad Amir as well as Wahab Riaz in the bowling
Indeed,
department.
indeed.
And looking at the batting change, but the batsman who has been replaced is Abid Ali. So he's been replaced by Asif Ali.
Yeah,
He's a hard-hitting batsman, Asif Ali. So if Pakistan have to be successful in England, they will have to have a good, explosive batting order at the top
right.
of the innings. So I think Asif Ali will be able to do that.
Indeed.
Yeah. Speaking of Asif Ali, yeah, you had something to say.
Well, yeah, I mean, the cruel irony of life, right? So, Asif Ali gets picked to play for Pakistan in the World Cup, and on that day, he loses his daughter to cancer. So, it's very unfortunate to hear this, and our condolences are with Asif Ali and his family, right? And may God give them the strength to bear through these times, right? But yeah, look at the irony of life that he gets picked for Pakistan. But well, he gets picked deservedly. Let me say that first because he did
Yeah.
really well in the England series with a couple of really hard hitting 50s. And he showed
Mhm.
that this guy could be sort of a finisher, right? He could
Mhm.
bat behind the likes of Hafiz and Shoaib Malik if both of them play, right? I mean, my personal opinion is maybe both of them need not start. Maybe one of them will start, but let's see how it goes. I think they have room for all three in the lineup.
Mm.
So that's one thing. The other thing, when it comes to Wahab Riaz, right?
Mhm.
He's also an exponent of reverse swing bowling, right?
Mm.
So I've heard a part of Chief Selector Inzamam ul Haq's, let's say, introduction of the World Cup squad. The thing he indicated was that Wahab Riaz has been brought back, one, for his aggression and his, let's say, pace and his ability to get in the batsman's face, but also his
Mhm.
experience. But the most
Mhm.
important factor is that, well, he can reverse swing the ball. And Inzamam said what they have noticed in this ongoing England series or the just recently concluded England series for Pakistan is that the pitches might be more neutral. Even though there may be some early morning starts or late afternoon starts, the pitches will be more neutral so that the matches are exciting and there are no one-sided matches, right? And that means bowling in the depth and the ability to reverse swing the ball will be very important. So with that in mind, I think both also for their experience, of course, Wahab Riaz has been brought back, and Mohammad Amir also retains his spot or has been brought back because Mohammad Amir I think is still a crucial has a crucial role to play because effectively he's been doing well in England, and I know his recent record has not been good, and he's just coming back from a bout of chickenpox. But they have a couple of warm-up matches, and also more importantly, they have a longish round robin like everybody else. So with that, I think they'll come good, and it might be a left side pick for me, but picking somebody like Wahab Riaz might not be a bad idea because if you remember, Mickey
Mhm.
Arthur had said this guy did not win a match for them in 2 years or whatnot,
He has
and
a
he was
point to
given
prove.
one
Yeah.
chance.
He has
Yes,
a point to
exactly,
prove. Yeah.
exactly.
So he has the hunger, to come back and do it for Pakistan.
No,
And
yeah, go on.
yeah, no, I'm just looking at the bowling squad here, the
Mm-hmm.
bowlers that are in the team. So Hassan Ali, Shaheen Shah Afridi, Mohammad
Mm-hmm.
Amir, Wahab Riaz. and of course the X factor Mohammad Hasnain. I
Yes.
saw him
Yes.
bowl in this warm-up match against Afghanistan yesterday,
Right.
which Pakistan happened to lose, unfortunately for them.
Uh-huh.
So they put up a score of 263 runs, having won the toss and deciding to bat first.
Right.
Babar Azam scored a century,
Mm-hmm.
and Pakistan looked okay at the top of the order, but they had a kind of a middle order collapse, or the middle order did not perform up to their full potential. Guys like
Mm-hmm.
Haris Sohail, he got out for 1 run. Hafiz
Right.
was also out in the teens. Only Shoaib Malik, we are a fan of Shoaib Malik, right? We keep saying this. He's our
Yes.
son-in-law.
Yes. Of course.
He provided some stability there in the middle order, and it's good to see that he's scoring runs again. So he scored 44 runs.
Yes.
And apart from that, nobody else, stood up and helped Pakistan score a bigger score. This was 262 runs all out. Afghanistan, right? I mean, they are a good squad. They're looking good every time they play. Well,
Mm-hmm.
this is a warm-up match, so they play 15 against 15. So you can choose your 11 to bat and 11 to bowl, right? So you can choose that.
Right. Right.
So Afghanistan tested out their full bowling strength by the look of it, and
Mm-hmm.
Mohammad Nabi, and Rashid Khan. They were in and amongst the wickets. So did Daulat Zadran and Hamid Hassan.
Right.
Uh,
Hamid Hassan,
Hamid Hassan, yeah,
headband guy.
yeah, indeed, yeah.
Nice.
So he picked up a wicket.
Nice.
But
Uh-huh.
in response, Afghanistan started off very well. They had an explosive start. We talked about this guy in one of our previous episodes, as well as in, I think, when we did a feature on Afghanistan cricket team.
Mm-hmm.
Hazratullah Zazai, the young guy
Right.
coming up the ranks.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
He's an explosive opener, and he did that on this occasion. He did provide an explosive start to their chase. So he made 49 out of 28 deliveries. So very hard-hitting batsman.
Mm-hmm.
And Afghanistan got off to a flyer. Unfortunately, Mohammad
Right.
Shahzad was retired hurt. I don't know why.
Oh,
I couldn't follow that. What happened there?
right.
But their middle order all clicked actually. So all of them got starts. Rahmat Shah got 32 runs. Samiullah Shinwari, he made 24 runs. But then again, they had a lower middle order collapse. So Asghar Afghan, sorry, he
Yeah.
got out cheaply. But Mohammad Nabi, provided some stability there in the middle order, and along with Hashmatullah Shahidi, who remained unbeaten on 74 runs, he guided
Mm-hmm.
Afghanistan home. So they won the match with 2 balls to spare, and Afghanistan
Right.
have actually beaten Pakistan now, which means Pakistan have extended their unwanted losing streak. I think they're now down
Oh,
to 9 matches or something. So they haven't won a match ever since under Shoaib Malik. Malik's captaincy, they won a match. Remember, in South
yeah. Yeah.
Africa.
In South
In South
Africa.
Africa.
Oh,
So
God.
ever since
All right.
that, they haven't won a match in ODI cricket. Well, this was a
Mm-hmm.
warm-up match, but still, it will really do them, a world of good if they can win one match. Let's see what they will
Right.
come up with. But I
Mm.
think you mentioned this offline as well. Pakistan on a losing streak might be
Yeah.
too hot to handle later in the World Cup when the real tournament begins. So we might as well see the real Pakistan then, fiery Pakistan. They will have a point to prove, right? So it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
interesting. But yeah, I mean, looking at the squad, they have batsmen of the likes of Babar Azam, Imam ul Haq, Hafiz with the experience, Asif Ali with
Right.
the explosive ability, Shadab Khan the all-rounder, and
Mm-hmm.
Imad Wasim as well. So it looks very balanced now. Although I feel sorry for Faheem Ashraf and Junaid Khan to miss out, right?
Well, I mean, Faheem Ashraf was sort of declining suddenly. Something happened, and I think he was not right. He was not in the right mental frame of mind, let's say, right? Or he was not in the right frame of mind because um, he was suddenly lost the sting in the bowling. He could bat, he didn't bat, but maybe they jumped the gun a bit there. I don't know because he's sort of been in and around the squad for almost 2 years now, right?
Yeah.
And he sort of set up himself as somebody who's able to give you that, let's say, 8 or 10 overs in a match. He's probably the first change bowler. He will not be, he'll not be the new ball bowler, but later also provide some important runs lower down the order. I don't know if there was something else going on in the background, or maybe he didn't feel confident, but Indeed, on field his performances have lagged. It's you can see that.
Yeah.
But I mean, he could not pick himself up as well. I mean, he kept going from bad to worse. So there were probably two ways to go. One is you infuse new blood, but the other was to retain him and give him that confidence. But I think Pakistan chose to go with the new blood. In this case, old blood, Wahab Riaz. But nonetheless,
Yeah.
effective. I hope that's one thing. And Junaid Khan, look, he was always going to be a like-for-like replacement when it comes to Amir. And I think they went back to the safety that Amir provides. And Junaid Khan himself did not move mountains with his performances. He was just average. So as a result, they probably went with Amir, knowing that Amir might still be able to rise up to the occasion, as he did in the Champions Trophy final.
But Amir is down on pace. I saw him bowl yesterday, a couple of overs. He's bowling at 80, 81 miles an hour. That's something like 130 kilometers per hour. But when he started out all those years ago, you remember he was bowling 140 plus comfortably. And when he was even a teenager back then, just like Mohammad Hasnain is right now. And I saw Hasnain bowl 95 miles per hour yesterday, delivery which was bowled at 152 kilometers per hour. So that was almost like Shoaib Akhtar. So
Fantastic.
It's amazing to see such pace from a young kid. And I also happened to catch a glimpse of what Wasim Akram had to say about this guy, about this kid. New kid. Wasim Akram said he's falling, his head is slightly falling over. His arm could be higher still, should be closer to the ear. And with some, fine tuning here and there, he could be the next big weapon for Pakistan when it comes to fast bowling. So there's a lot of potential there. He has raw pace, so they just need to take care of him and manage his career in a better way than they did with the other fast bowlers, right? The big names that we once had, who unfortunately, I really feel very sorry for Shoaib Akhtar. I still am a huge fan of his. He could not, he had some injuries as well, but he could have done a lot more, I would say.
Yes. I mean, when you hear to Shoaib Akhtar as now let's say the panelist in all these game shows, he appears to be, first of all, a genuine sort of an individual, but also I think he has a completely different outlook on how things are done, how things are dealt with during his playing career. So it's a long discussion, and I've been listening to him for a past couple of years. And first of all, he comes across as a genuine gentleman, but there are always two sides to the story, aren't there? So I think we can discuss this. We can make this probably something we can discuss this as
that's true, but I'm not taking his perspective into this. I'm only saying what I feel about it, right? I mean, the way his career progressed from the late 90s until how it diminished at the fag end of his career could have been better, but anyway. Could have some. We also have some people like Irfan Pathan, for example, our own Irfan Pathan.
Exactly.
Right. So look at how his career took off and how it basically crash landed. Right. So yeah.
Right. That can happen. Well, but yes, but look, they are able to both probably spin it out and make a media career for themselves after their playing time. So it's not all doom and gloom. One can hope,
I think they're born cricketers, right? I mean, they are born to play. Whatever they do outside their cricketing career, of course, they have to fill in a void which has been left behind after having played cricket for so long. So they'll have to find another profession. Not everybody will have. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say anything, but some people are blessed to have a long career as well as having made so much money while playing cricket. Not everybody is gifted with such kind of talent as well as opportunity. So they have to make something out of it. So,
I understand. No, I understand. All good. All right. Going forward, the other team to finalize their squad was England, right? So here, as we all expected, England have gone with Archer, right?
Yeah.
So they have gone with the pace and the promise that Archer provides, right? And of course, let's say the left side pick or the left field pick here is Liam Dawson, who was not in the ODI squad for the last two ODI series, and he's not been in the England setup all of this year actually. But he's been given a chance based on his performances in the ongoing, the List A tournament in England, the local List A tournament, and he's been doing really well. He's the sixth highest wicket taker as well as he's been scoring some runs, right? So that's they've called in Liam Dawson in the place of Joe Denley, who I thought was a bit unlucky because I don't think he got enough opportunity in this England-Pakistan series to with the bat or the ball. and he did not do much with what he got either. But unfortunately, it looked like it was probably he was given, the captain or the team management were given Joe Denley, and they might not have been very happy. And then, Ashley Giles had also hinted that Liam Dawson was never out of the picture, even when the bilateral series was going on, and then they just brought him in, right? And of course, James Vince takes the place of Alex Hales, who was sort of deselected earlier, right? So in this whole story, the only guy that comes across as a little bit unfortunate is David Willey, along with Joe Denley, of course. But David Willey mainly because he was doing okay. He sort of picked up his game a little. You could see that he was striving for more pace, and also, he was trying his best. And I think he also did a little bit with the bat. But unfortunately, I think the promise Jofra Archer offers is too good. And the selector, Ed Smith, said that, actually, when he said that, Joe Denley, Willey was a bit unfortunate to miss out. And he said to not pick Archer would have been a mistake, which I agree with. But yeah, I don't think they could have fit both. Liam Plunkett did enough to make sure he went on. And then I think Chris Wokes is your sort of banker in that fast bowling squad. So I don't think they would want to tinker with him. So yeah, I mean, England have also finalized their squad. And I think there were some minor injury scares, right? I think Owen Morgan suffered a small, flake fracture, something they called it, while batting. I think he suffered a small snowflake fracture or whatever. But he's expected to be fit, right? That's one thing. And when it comes to the other squads, well, India they have finalized their squad previously, and they were sort of worried about Kedar Jadhav, but now it looks like he'll recover in time and he'll make the squad, right? That's one thing. And also, I think Vijay Shankar had a small scare, Giri.
No, I only read that Vijay Shankar was out on the field during a practice drill. He got injured, and then he went back to the dressing room, and a few hours later he was back with the bat, so he was coming out to bat again. So but he's there as a batsman, right?
It looks like he was
something like that. Yeah, something like that.
Huh?
But he's playing his main playing role here as a batsman, not Batman. Sorry.
Right.
Well, Batman would also be nice, I have to say. But yeah,
you never know. You never know. You don't know what he does at night. All right.
Yeah. So if he has to sit out, then it opens up a place for KL Rahul in the playing 11. I have to say. Yeah.
All right. I think so. Unless they want to replace him in the squad, but this is not a major injury, right?
Okay.
Yeah. All good. All right. Then going further, we can take a quick look at the prize money that has been offered now for the winners of the 2019 World Cup. So, the prize money is now 4.8 million for the winners of the 2019 World Cup. And, this is actually more than the overall prize money in the 2003 tournament.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Right. So when we look at the progression in the 2003 tournament, the winners took home 2 million, and in the 2007 version it was 2.4. In the 2011 it was 3.2. In the 2015 it was 3.9, and now it's 4.8 million. So this is fantastic, right? As also, in this World Cup, even if you were to not qualify beyond the league stage, you'd still take home $500,000. So all of these are in US dollars, but nonetheless, it's a substantial amount of money.
Yeah, right? Obviously, yeah. It's incomparable. 2003, if 2 million against is almost 5 million. Wow, it's more than doubled.
Exactly, exactly. That's a good thing. So that means the people who get their money pumping in the money through sponsorship and other things, they're also reflecting in the on-field money. So that's a good thing. And why not? It's a World Cup. It happens once every 4 years. So I can understand. It's like Grand Slams in tennis, what you're saying.
Yeah, in Wimbledon as well. Yeah, the money notice that also at Wimbledon. Why not?
Yeah, why not? Why not? Well, I mean, there's another point that we must say here. I don't know off the top of my head the winning money for the Women's World Cup team, but I don't think it's 4.8 million, and that might be a factor away. Might be half of it or something. But yeah, I mean, I hope this also reaches parity, because we discussed Wimbledon, and there's been talk of how women's game needs to catch up in tennis, and the money that they're paid out needs to be the same. Maybe even the women's game in cricket also needs to catch up, and the money that the women's World Cup winners also get should be the same. But
but I think firstly they have to play more matches. There should be more visibility of what they're doing, because there's not so much coverage when you compare it with men's cricket, right? So they have to start with that. They have to make it more popular. Then more money will start pouring in to the game, and then they will be able to have a bigger share. I mean, it's going to be. I don't know when that will happen. It will take some time. Just another mention here
Right.
in this current World Cup, men's cricket, this World Cup. So each
Hmm.
match victory will win a team $50,000. That's also a lot of money for one match, don't you think?
Of course, that's not bad amount of money at all.
Yeah, I think the player of the match gets something like 1,000 or $1,500, if I'm not wrong.
Uh-huh.
So this is a lot, right? This is a lot of money.
That's very good.
Yeah,
That's very good.
yeah,
So why not? I mean, they deserve it. I mean, we know they are a bit overpaid. We say it, but
yeah,
nonetheless, it's a World Cup, so that's fine. I'll understand that.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Going forward, if you were to look at the other important news that has come out just before the World Cup, Afghanistan coach Phil Simmons has announced that he'll probably step down as the coach of Afghanistan after the World Cup. Right? He started into 2017, very end of 2017,
Hmm.
frankly, and he was mainly appointed to make sure that Afghanistan qualify for the World Cup. This was sort of his main agenda, and he made sure that happens.
Yeah,
Right? And after that, of course, they have gone strength to strength under him. But I think he's done a really good job with them. And with that, also there may be some disagreements in the background, because also when the captain was changed, maybe he sort of indicated he was not consulted, and he was also informed that Askaraf Khan's captaincy was brought to an end, and Gulbuddin Naib in ODI and so on will replace him. And he was just told about it, right? And maybe this may also have had some impact, but we don't know. But it was an 18-month contract, and let's put it like this: he's done a really good job,
mm,
and he's taken Afghanistan to the next level,
yeah,
right? And it's going to be a tough challenge, whoever will take over as the coach of Afghanistan after this. And I hope they choose the right sort of a person,
hmm,
right? Who's first of all has experience coaching a up and coming team, but also has enough worldwide experience, or coaching at the top level experience. Let me put it like that, who can take them forward,
hmm,
right?
hmm.
So we wish Phil Simmons anyway all the best for his future endeavors after the World Cup, right?
Yep. Now, as mentioned earlier, we have a special guest today, or in fact, a returning guest, Kanna, here to talk to us about a feature that he has prepared. So let me welcome Kanna back to the show. Hello, Kanna. How are you doing?
I'm good, Giri. Good to be back on the podcast, and hope to have a good time like the last time round.
Right, right. So World Cup is not so far away, right? I'm sure you have something to say about the World Cup that's upcoming, in England in a couple of weeks, or maybe just a week from now,
Just a week,
right?
just a week. It's from next Thursday. Long awaited. So hopefully India can do well. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
let's hope. Let's see. England are obviously the favorites, but
Yeah.
like you keep your fingers crossed and hope India make it to the semi-final first, and then we take
Right.
it from there.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds good. Right. So what have you prepared today? What are you going to talk to us about?
Uh, My feature today is about a couple of cricketers who are not what you consider to be in the top echelon of elite superstars, but nevertheless
Hmm.
very good cricketers and were the unsung heroes of their teams during the World Cup campaign.
Right. Okay. I'm curious. So I will let you speak about it, and here you go. Start.
Thank you. Sri Lanka were the surprise winners of the 1996 World Cup held in the subcontinent. When you think of the heroes of that campaign, the names that come to your mind are the Mad Max, Arvind De Silva, the wily old captain Arjuna Ranatunga, the dashing openers who revolutionized cricket by pinch hitting in the first 15 overs, Sanat Jayasuriya and Romesh Kaluvitarna, and their spinners, Mutaya Muralidharan, Kumar Dharmasena, and again Sanat Jayasuriya. But there was one more hero for Sri Lanka who played a vital role in them winning the cup. He was the number 3 batsman for the Sri Lankan team, Asanka
Hmm.
Pradeep Gurusinha. Guru Sinha was a
Right.
big, stocky, bearded batsman. Mind you, when beards weren't a fashion like now.
Yeah.
He was a throwback to the old days, playing the sheet anchor role at number 3 in a team full of stroke makers.
Hmm.
He finished with the sixth highest aggregate runs, 307 in the tournament at an average of 51. Uh, Something to note here, Sri Lanka played 2 matches less because Australia and West Indies refused to travel to Sri Lanka just before the World Cup. Because if I remember correctly, it was because there were a couple of bomb blasts and there were major safety concerns around the time. And Australia and West Indies refused to travel to Sri Lanka and instead gave them a walkover in the group games. So now coming to the actual World Cup matches, like I just spoke about, their first match was against Australia, which was a walkover, and Sri Lanka got the points for the match. In their second match, they played Zimbabwe. So Zimbabwe batting first scored a decently competitive 228 for 6 in the 50 overs. Now remember, this was 1996. It's not 1999. I mean, it's not 2019. So 228 at that time was actually a decent total.
Yeah.
Alistair Campbell was the top scorer in the match with 75 of 102 balls. Sri Lanka, in reply, lost two quick wickets. Kaluvitarna for a duck with the score at 5, and then Jayasuriya for 6 with the score only at 23. At this stage, Gurusinha, playing a patient hand, guided the team out of danger with Aravinda De Silva and put on a partnership of 172 for the third wicket. Gurusinha ended up getting run out for 87 of 100 balls with 5 fours and 6 sixes. This was another interesting facet of Gurusinha's batting. He was basically a stodgy player, playing correct defense and then taking singles, flicking and cutting the ball mainly. But because he was so powerful, he would all of a sudden wake up like Misbah and start hitting sixes. So that was just a small little facet
Hmm.
of Guru Sinha's batting. Sri Lanka
Right.
finally won the match quite easily, chasing down the score in 37 overs, with Aravinda scoring 91 as well. Then the next match again was against West Indies, which, like I mentioned earlier, they got a
Hmm.
walkover and they got the full points for that. After that, they faced India, which was the match at the Firozshah Kotla.
Hmm.
India batting first, led by a brilliant century by Tendulkar, scored 271 for 3. Tendulkar, if I remember correctly, scored 137 and was run out in the last over or the
Hmm.
over before the last.
Hmm.
In the chase, all the top order Sri Lankan batsmen scored consistent runs. Guru Sinha himself scored 25 of 27 and put on an important partnership of 76 with Sanat Jayasuriya, setting them onto the path of victory.
Hmm.
In fact, this match is famous for another thing.
Yeah.
Giri, can you guess what this was?
Was it Manoj Prabhakar bowling off spin?
Yes, this is
How can
this
I
is
forget that?
yes. He started off bowling pace, and then Jayasuriya took him apart, and then he was reduced to
I,
bowling off
I
spin.
think Jayasuriya basically ended Manoj Prabhakar's career there, right there and then.
Absolutely,
And at his home ground, if I'm not wrong, Prabhakar
that is
was
correct.
actually from Delhi, so
Yes.
it was a sad
Unfortunate,
time.
unfortunate for
Yeah.
Prabhakar. He was a good servant for Indian cricket, but he didn't. I mean, cricket can be cruel. Sport can be
Yeah.
very
But
cruel, and
speaking of Prabhakar, do you remember that innings he played with Nayan Mongia? Do you remember that match when Prabhakar
yeah.
they were
I think
chasing down a score? I think it was probably against West Indies. I'm not sure. Maybe England or West Indies.
I
Uh,
think, and they just stalled, and they didn't bother trying to win the match for India or something like that.
no,
Was
Manoj
it not?
Prabhakar was actually very close to his century.
Oh,
So he
okay,
played for his
yeah.
century, but he didn't try to accelerate or he didn't try to chase the score down along with Nayan Mongia.
Yeah. My memories are very foggy, but yeah, I do remember that it was Mongia and Prabhakar batting at that point of time.
Well, these things kind
Correct.
of stick out.
Yeah,
So,
I know, I know.
yeah, go on.
Okay, so continuing back, so their next match was against Kenya. Sri Lanka batting first went absolutely berserk. Jayasuriya scored 44 of 27, Kaluvitarana 33 of 18, Guru Singh 84 with 7 fours and 3 sixes, De Silva 145 of 115, and Ranatunga 75 of 40 balls. And
Wow.
Sri Lanka actually ended up with at 398 for 5, the highest ODI score at that time. The interesting bit I found out during my research was, and I didn't mention it when I first said his score, Guru
Hmm.
Sinha's score is 84 of 103 balls.
Right.
So if he had batted at a slightly higher strike rate or a strike rate of 100, especially considering that all the other batsmen who had batted on that day scored at more than 100, Sri Lanka would have been the first team ever to have scored 400 in an ODI. which is which is something. I mean, I was just going through the
Well,
scorecard, and I just managed to I just saw that, and I was like, okay, if this guy had just if he had scored if he had scored 86 of 100 balls, I mean, they would have been the first team to score 400.
well,
Yeah,
I'm going to take Guru Sinha's side here and then say it's because of his 84 of 103 that Sri Lanka actually managed to score 390 odd runs. Because he was the
absolutely.
solid rock, right? The other batsmen revolved around. I think he was
Uh,
there providing stability.
that's true. That was his role in the '96 World Cup.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, so going back to the match, Kenya in reply managed to score 254 for 7 with Steve Ticolo almost becoming the first associate member to score a century, getting out for 96.
Hmm.
So Sri Lanka at the end of the group stage, if I remember correctly, I think they were in Group A, and they topped their group,
Hmm.
and they faced England in the quarterfinals, who had finished fourth in Group B. So in the quarterfinals, and this is something again that I just happen to remember. Uh, I think all the teams that ended up in the semifinals were all from Group A.
Hmm.
Because if I remember, I mean, I mean, I know I'm digressing from the topic right now, but I
Hmm.
just happened to think of it because I think the Sri Lanka beat England. I think South Africa were top from Group B. They lost to West Indies. Australia, I think, were second. Australia beat, who did they beat in the quarterfinals? I don't remember. Maybe, yeah, they beat New Zealand in the semi-final. I mean, quarterfinals. I remember it was a high-scoring match. I think it was played at Chepauk, and then India were third, and Pakistan were second, and India beat Pakistan at Bangalore.
Hmm.
So it was all the teams from the Group A who actually reached the semi-finals.
Right.
Something just that I just happened to think about.
Nice.
Okay. So I mean, sorry to
No, it's
digress.
okay.
Like I said,
Hmm.
in the quarterfinals, England scored 235 for 8, batting first, with Philip de Freitas top scoring with 67. Sri Lanka, led by Jayasurya's assault, chased it down in only 40 overs. This was the time when the cult of Jayasurya was at its
Hmm.
peak. Uh, Gurusena played the ideal supporting role with a key innings. He again scored 45 of 63 balls with 5 fours and put on a partnership of 101, ensuring that the team had no
Hmm.
nerves and and reached the target with uh, enough overs to
Hmm.
spare. Then came the semi-final, the famous semi-final at Eden Gardens. This is the one match you could say that he had a failure. Batting
Hmm.
first, he scored only one of he scored only one of 16 balls. But sometimes statistics only tell you half
Hmm.
the story. Sri Lanka lost 2 wickets in the first over, with both Jayasurya and Kaluvitarna getting out to I think it was Srinath caught
Yeah.
at third
And
man.
Prasad, I think.
So
Yeah.
so at that so at that time they needed somebody to just stay at the crease and calm their nerves. It was Sri Lanka's first semi-final, first big semi-final in front of a hostile home crowd at Eden
Hmm.
Gardens. I mean, everybody knows Aravinda De Silva came in and immediately counter-attacked and scored 66. But just Guru Singh had a very important role. He just stayed there, making sure that there wasn't a
Hmm.
collapse. Those 2 wickets could have easily been 4 wickets, 5 wickets. Instead, he just stayed there, uh, just let the innings settle down before they could actually move
Hmm.
forward. Uh, to say they both De Silva and Guru Sinha only put 34, but I believe that was an important 34, which laid the platform for Sri Lanka to go on and score the 250 that they did, which finally led them to winning
Hmm.
the match. So now that Sri Lanka had won the semi-final, it was a big final. Ranatunga, as he had done throughout the tournament, chose to bowl first. Australia, after a fine start through Mark Taylor and Ricky Ponting, struggled their way to 247 in the 50 overs. But this was the World Cup final, and no team batting second had won before in the history of the
Hmm.
tournament. And Australia, sure enough, would not make it easy. They got both the openers out quickly, Jayasuriya and Kaluvitarne again, and Sri Lanka was struggling at 23 for 2 when De Silva joined Gurusena at the crease. Both of them slowly but surely built a partnership, and most importantly, they attacked Vaughan and took him for 58 in his
Hmm.
10 overs. Gurusena went on to score a very important 65 of 99 before getting bowled out to Paul Rifle, trying to hit him over the mid off and
Hmm.
getting bowled. But their partnership of 125 set up the platform for De
Yeah.
Silva and Ranatunga to finish the match and secure a glorious World Cup win for Sri Lanka. Guru Sena often wasn't the prettiest player, had to come in very tough conditions at times, build partnerships, and often played the
Hmm.
supporting role. But it shouldn't take anything away from his contributions, and he was truly the unsung hero in Sri Lanka winning their
Hmm.
first World
Hmm.
Cup.
Is it true that Gurushina actually started out as a wicketkeeper in his younger days? Do you know this?
I I didn't know.
I
I
remember reading
actually didn't
somewhere
know
that he
about
actually
this.
started out as a wicketkeeper, and then he gradually established
Yeah,
himself as a number three batsman, as a sheet anchor, like you said. And I remember reading
yeah,
somewhere that must have been on Crick Info. I think I don't remember the name of the author. I will try to remember it later. He actually said that Gurusina was a rock on which Sri Lankan batting was founded, especially for that 1996 World Cup. So, as you said, I think he provided the stability the team needed to, the other players needed to express themselves, right? So, I think it was such a crucial role played by Gurusina. Yeah.
I mean, that's true. I mean, for us, we've grown up during that era. So we've seen the 96 World Cup. But until I started researching all the matter, I actually didn't realize that he had played this important a role during the World Cup, which is quite
Hmm.
surprising. Uh, I mean, he's contributed in every match. You understand the importance of a
Hmm.
number three, not the current day number three who has to be more attacking, but the old school number three, where the old Dravid playing at
Hmm.
number three, or the Gurusuna in this case playing the number three. Just the supporting role, just playing the sheet anchor and having all the players
Hmm.
play around him, which is exactly what he did throughout the tournament. And sure enough, he deserves more accolades than he probably has gotten for his performance in
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
96 World Cup.
True. True. Well, actually, I do remember him playing that 60 odd runs, 65 runs, I think, in that finals, right? So I do remember Gurusina playing that innings quite
Yeah,
well. And I also remember, yeah,
yeah. This
I think,
final, the final is one innings. Even I
yeah,
remember.
I think
Actually,
we
that's
were
true.
used to
Yeah,
play Arvinda De Silva making such big scores here, already played well, so well against India. And then, of course, you mentioned about, I think, was it Zimbabwe, where Sri Lanka made near 100, near 400 score. So Arvinda was already on song in the tournament. So
yeah,
if he scored a century, it was kind of expected, I think, at that stage. It was almost like Mahendra
yeah.
Singh
That's true.
Dhoni coming out and playing that 91 that he did against Sri Lanka in the 2011 finals. It was expected, he was there, so he was expected to carry the bat and finish the job for Indian cricket team. So, but Guru Singh is, yeah, I think he really is an unsung hero. Um, and did he also play a lot of Test cricket?
He. I mean, again, this was something he did play. I don't have the exact statistics
Hmm.
about him, about how many test matches he's played, but he did play
Okay.
quite a bit of test cricket. And one of the things, and one of the more interesting things that I read about while I was reading about Gurusena was he played a couple of series against Shane Warne, and he's very proud of the fact that he never got out to him. So Shane Warne doesn't have Guru Sinha as one of his victims in the
Mm.
708 wickets that he has. He has scored two centuries against Shane Warne,
Wow,
but he
that's
never
that's an
got out
amazing
to him.
record.
So
That's an
that was
amazing
something.
record.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. So that's what it is. That's something that I read. But one of the things I read about him was his test
Hmm.
career ended prematurely because he had some kind of a disagreement with Arjuna Ranatunga
Hmm.
about Sri Lankan cricket, and obviously Ranatunga being the captain and a
Yeah.
very powerful figure, obviously
Hmm.
after the '96 World Cup. So Guru Sinha's career
Okay.
was cut short, and probably would have played a lot many more years
So when did he
than
retire
he
then?
actually
When did he
played,
actually retire?
which is quite sad. I am not sure. I think probably around 97 or
Okay,
98 is when he actually retired. So he
so
didn't play much after the
mhm.
he didn't play much after
So still something like
the
early
World
30s
Cup
or
final
something.
actually.
So it's yeah. So
Yes, yes.
that's
Yeah,
a
that's
premature
what
end indeed. Yeah. Right.
yeah. So
Right.
that's what it
Mm-hmm.
is. Okay, so say to
Mm-hmm.
my second player. So Australia in the late 1990s were the dominant team
Mm-hmm.
in both Test and ODIs. They had reached the final of the 96 World Cup, won the World Cup in 1999 conducted in England, and came in as the overwhelming favourites for the 2003 World Cup. To say that their preparations before the start of the tournament suffered a setback would be an understatement. All-rounder Shane Watson had suffered a stress fracture in the back and had to withdraw from the squad. Michael Bevan was injured for the start of the tournament, and Vaughan took a diuretic, which was an illegal drug, and managed to get himself banned for a year, just days before the tournament started. Ricky Ponting, as the captain, insisted at that time that Andrew Simon should be picked in the squad. This was a bit of a surprise because Simons had hardly made an impression on the
Mm-hmm.
world stage until that time. He had an average of just 23 after 55 matches and was seen mainly as a brilliant fielder and a talented player who hadn't fulfilled his potential, much like Rohit Sharma
Yeah.
in the first
Until the
few
Champions
years
Trophy.
of his
Until
international
the
career,
Champions
or at
Trophy.
least
Yeah.
before,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, or at least yeah, that's true. Or yeah,
Yeah.
Champions Trophy when he started opening
Yeah.
the batting. Now, to give a quick history of Simons about his cricketing career, in the early part of his cricketing life, he lived in England and he played for Gloucestershire in the English county cricket. In fact, he once held the record for the most number of sixes in a first class innings, 16, which was only recently broken if I'm and I think this record he broke or he he created the record in I think 1995 or 96 and it was only broken
Okay.
after 2015 or 16. So he held the record for that long. England in fact wanted to pick him for
Mm-hmm.
their international side, but he opted for the tougher choice and chose to represent Australia and
Mm-hmm.
moved to Australia. Now to the actual World Cup. Australia's first match at the World Cup was against Pakistan at the Wanderers Johannesburg. Australia batting first were in trouble early at 86 for 4 after 16 overs. Both their openers, Gilchrist and Hayden, Damian Martin, and Jimmy Marr, the left-hander, they were all back in the shed, and in walked Andrew Simons under a lot of pressure and absolutely smashed
Mm-hmm.
all the Pakistani bowlers. Only Ponting supported him with 53, and he was out with the score at and Ponting got out
Mm-hmm.
at the score of 146. And this was again something that I was reading, and which may be totally untrue, just like the Steve was sledge to Herschel
Yeah.
Gibbs saying that you dropped the World Cup. In fact, when I mean, this is the story. The story goes something like this: that Andrew Simons walked out to the crease
Mm-hmm.
at Johannesburg in the match, and Ponting was at the other end. And apparently, Ponting told him that uh, I I I put my neck out for you, and now you better make sure that you prove me right and go out and make a big score, something of
So I
that
gave him
sort.
a pep talk.
Uh, so obviously he gave him a pep talk and he kind of threatened him
Okay.
that he has to score today, or
So
otherwise
did he
his
deliver
head would be on the
on
chopping
the
block.
word? Did he deliver? Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. But Simons, he showed maturity batting until the very end of the innings. He reached his 100 of only 92 balls and finally finished on 143 not out of 125 balls with 18 fours and 2 sixes. And if I'm correct, that was his highest score until the day he retired. An interesting anecdote from the match was Pakistan was so angry and so fed up with, or probably they
Mm-hmm.
totally did not expect Simon's onslaught that Waka Yunis bowled two beamers in the 49th over. And if you look at the highlights, I mean, it does look
Mm-hmm.
that it was deliberate. I have to say, because he bowled two consecutive
Interesting.
beamers to him in the 49th over and he had to be taken off. Uh, Australia ended up with 310 for 8 and comfortably ended up winning the match by 82 runs. Not surprisingly, Andrew Simmons he was declared as the man of the match, and a new star was born
Mm-hmm.
in the World Cup. Uh, but the thing was, Australia had such a good team in the World Cup, in the 2003 World Cup. And like I said, I mean, he only got a chance. Oh, I mean, there was another. I mean, he actually got a chance because, like I said, um, Michael Bevan was
Mm-hmm.
injured in the batting lineup, and actually Darren Lehman was actually banned for racial abuse. He had racially abused a couple of Sri Lankans in the tournament just before the World Cup. So Andrew Simons wouldn't have actually played in the first match if it weren't for these two players. So they had
Mm-hmm.
a lot of batsmen. So if as I go through my list, there are a lot of matches in
Mm-hmm.
which he actually didn't play, and Australia obviously were very dominant through the World Cup, and that also resulted in him not getting much chances. The second match was against India, in which I think India scored something like 125, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously Australia won by 9 wickets. So you obviously wouldn't expect Simons to have much of a chance. Against Netherlands, both Lehman and Bevan were both back in the final playing 11. So Simons was actually dropped from the squad, uh, and he did not play in that match. Again against Zimbabwe, the next match, he did not get a chance to play. Against Namibia, he was the second highest scorer after Hayden's 88. Simon scored 59 of 63 balls with two fours and two sixes, helping Australia score 301 for six, and they comfortably won the match by 256. Namibia getting all out for 45. His one failure was against England. He only managed to score a duck of 5 balls. And because of this, again, he was dropped against Sri Lanka and New Zealand. But Australia again
Mm-hmm.
picked him for the semi final, which 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 you can say was a masterstroke, or out of, I mean, I guess they just thought that their batting wasn't performing well enough, because against New Zealand also, I think that was the match in which Shane
Mm-hmm.
Bond took 5 wickets or 6 wickets, and Australia just about survived winning the match. So against Sri Lanka at Port Elizabeth in the semi final, uh, this was a very slow pitch. Australia lost 3 wickets, and this match was famous for for something that happened. Giri, can you
No,
guess
no
what that
idea.
was?
Tell me.
This was the match that Gilchrist
Hasn't he done
walked.
that on multiple occasions?
No, this was actually the very first time that
Okay,
that
interesting.
Gilchrist walked. He had never walked. He had never walked before that. I mean, he had a bolt of lightning hit him or something like that. That was the match. I think he tried to hit a sweep shot. Ball went up in the air, and then the umpire didn't give it out, and then Adam Gilchrist started walking. So
Mm-hmm.
after that, he walked every time, but before
Oh,
that,
I
he
didn't know
never
that. I
walked.
thought he was
So
always a walker. Okay,
that was
that's
how
good to
the
know.
setup. Yeah. So Australia, I mean, coming back to the match, Australia lost 3 quick wickets and were 51 for three after 12 overs. Uh, like I said, the wicket was slow. The spinners strangled Australia, and they could never quite get away. But the one thing was, the batsman, or in this case, Andrew Simons, realized that this was not a 250 wicket. This is probably more like a 220 wicket or something. So he just completely changed his game. He anchored the innings, and he finished with unbeaten on 91 of 118 balls,
Mm-hmm.
with 7 fours and 1 6, and which ended up being his second match winning innings in the tournament. The value of the innings can actually be gauged by the fact that no other player came close to scoring a 50 in the match. Um, i- in Australia, the second highest scorer was Darren Lehman, who scored only 36 and who put on a partnership with Andrew Simons. And even Sri Lanka, when they batted, uh, Kumar Sangakkara was the highest scorer, second highest scorer, who was 39. So in a match where nobody else scored 40, Simon scored double of it, or just more than that. He ended up with 91, and he won the
Mm-hmm.
man of the match. And Australia obviously won the match on Duckworth and Lewis by 48. and went on to the final. And we
Yeah.
all know what happened in the final. So I will not go into that. In any case, Simons didn't
Okay.
actually get a chance to do much in the match. So, so to finally end, starting off as a controversial selection before the start of the World Cup, Andrew Simon showed his talent and value to the team, contributing in two very important games. The first game, when there was a lot of questions around the team as to whether they would be able to perform, being the defending champions, and then again in the semi-finals, ensuring Australia would go on to
Hmm.
defend their World Cup, setting the stage for three consecutive World Cups in again in 2007. The tournament also provided a springboard for Simons to have a very successful career in both ODIs and Tests for the better part of the next decade.
Right. Talking about Andrew Simmons, I also remember that he was also a good bowler, right? He was a handy bowler, not just a powerful batsman. Yeah.
He was
He
a
was. He was. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
yeah. He and I mean he could bowl both pace and spin. So he would bowl both medium pace and then he would come and amble up
Yeah.
and bowl spin. And one of the interesting things, at least I always used to feel that about Simons, and probably you cannot compare it to today's cricketers. But if you remember during that time, all the brilliant
Mm-hmm.
fielders were all short.
Yeah.
You had
Jaunty.
Herschel Gibbs, you had Jaunty Rhodes, you had Ricky Ponting, but Andrew
Uh-huh.
Simons was the exception to the rule. He was this big, very tall guy, but
Yeah.
if you remember, he was a brilliant fielder. I mean, both on the ground and catching.
Yeah. Probably down to
So
his
there was
rugby
something else
roots,
about
I
him,
guess.
actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe
So it's
about his
it's.
rugby. So that's what it is.
So
So
he was a very powerful all rounder. Do you think he lived up to his promise, or did he fulfill his potential?
I think he got derailed a
Mm.
little bit by the Monkey Gate scandal. I
Mm-hmm.
won't go into who was right or wrong. So I think if it weren't for the scandal, I think he would have probably been a much better. I mean, his career stats at the end
Mm.
of his career would have been much better. Uh, but from where he started, I think he had more than a decent career. I mean, at his peak, he was one of the first names on the
Mm.
Australian at least one day cricket team, along with the likes of. I mean, he was an integral part of
Mm-hmm.
the 2007 World Cup team as well. So two World Cups, he had a very important role in both of them. So you have to say that he's had a good career, but I guess I would say that he could
Well,
have
I
done
for sure
more.
think
What do
so
you think?
because I think when was this monkey kid? It was in 2008, and by then he would have been about 33. So he might have had another 2-3 years of good cricket in him. After that, um,
Yeah,
so
that's
so you talked about two unsung heroes, right? One from Sri Lanka and one from Andrew Simons. Sorry, Australia even. So
true.
who do you think, or whose performances do you think can be rated higher? I mean, can we even do that? Guru Sinha or Simons in terms of contribution to their
I
team winning the World Cup?
It's
Yeah.
it's actually quite tough, but I would actually go for I'd
Okay.
probably say Guru Sinha. The reason why I think that is because the Australian side of 90s and 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
they were so talented. I mean, like I said, he was not even
Mm.
supposed to be a part of the first 11. I mean, in the batting, they had Gilchrist, Hayden, Ponting, Martin, Darren Lehman, Jimmy Marr. So, I mean, I'm guessing if he
Mm.
hadn't stood up, somebody else would have stood up for Australia. That was the thing about the 2000 Aussies, which we
Yeah.
hated so much. You know, i- if you get the top six, the number
Yeah.
seven will
Yeah.
come and get you. So that was the thing. So, but Guru Sinha, I mean, nobody
Yeah.
expected first Sri Lanka to actually win, and I mean, so Guru Sinha actually, I mean, I just felt when I went through the records, I just felt in the
Mm.
tough situations he was there. I mean, maybe his was a supporting role, but without the supporting role, I just felt
Mm.
that the team would have fallen around him. I mean, the team would have just folded. I mean, you cannot depend on just Arvinder De Silva to attack and everybody else to collapse. So my feeling is that I would just by a little bit probably, but I would give the edge to Guru Sinha in this round.
Yeah,
Would you
absolutely.
agree?
I absolutely agree with your assessment there. I think Guru Sinha was the solid rock that Sri Lanka needed. Um, so, yeah, I think that's a good note to, would you say, end this segment. So let me thank you for presenting such a nice feature about two unsung heroes in the past World Cups, Guru Sinha and Andrew Simons. Um, and
My pleasure.
yeah, it was lovely talking to you, Kanna. Would love to welcome you back once again in one of the upcoming episodes.
Thank you. I would love to come back.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks for having me.
Well,
Now,
mhm.
well, in the Ireland, West Indies, and Bangladesh Tri Series, we had the denouement of the series, right? So the finals was played in the previous week. So Bangladesh, they've done really well. They've sort of thrown the gauntlet to the other teams in the World Cup by playing very comfortably and showing that they will not be pushovers here, because the way they played clearly showed every other team that they better be wary of this Afghanistan team, because the Bangladesh team, because they beat West Indies in the final. So they remained unbeaten in the tournament. They beat West Indies twice in the round robin league, and in the final they were able to again beat West Indies. So West Indies were batting first and they were doing well. They were 152 for 1 in 24 overs when rain intervened. And just to make a final of it, I think the West Indian innings was stopped and Bangladesh were set a very challenging total of 210 from just 24 overs, right? But they were able to chase this down. So I remember reading that, in the interval, Bangladeshi, let's say the experienced people in Bangladeshi team, Muhammadullah and Mushfiqur Rahim, and especially the captain, Mashrafe Murtaza, told the youngsters, don't worry about it at all. We have not lost to this team. And all we have to remember is this is like a T20 match. We just play it like a T20 match and we'll win this. And they did. Soumya Sarkar started off the innings very strongly by scoring 66 of 41. Mushfiqur Rahim continued this by scoring 36 of 22. But then the finishing touch was provided by Mossaddeq Hossain and Mahmudullah. Right, Mahmudullah scored a run of ball 19, but Mossaddeq Hossain took them home with a 27 ball 52. And I dare say they were in trouble actually with 3 to 4 hours remaining. But all West Indian bowlers turned out to be completely useless. They were bowling sort of standard one-day lengths. Nobody could finish off by bowling those death over lengths. And especially the Kimar Roach was really, really punished. And I think I remember in 1 over, Mossaddeq Hossain took Kimar Roach for a few runs, but also Fabian Allen, the spinner, was actually relatively doing well. But when he was brought on with some 38 runs required of 3 overs or some such, I think he took him apart, Mossaddeq Hossain, for 3 sixes and a boundary in an over. And those 22 runs sort of more or less finished the match off. So they're very, let's say, brave. They're almost fearless, this Bangladeshi team. And their bowling will let them down, I feel, in the main part of the World Cup. But maybe not. We'll see how it goes. Right? This was one of the tournaments that happened in the interim. The other tournament that happened was the Ireland and Afghanistan, bilateral one-day series. So it was just 2 matches. So in the first match, Ireland had beaten Afghanistan comfortably by, first of all, scoring only 210. But then they were able to take full advantage of the bowling conditions. And they, restricted Afghanistan to just 138. So Afghanistan were 138 all out. That was a sort of a surprise win for Ireland. But in the second match, they were very pumped up, let's say, the Afghani boys. So they made sure that the same mistake wouldn't happen again, right? So in this case, they batted first. So Mohammad Shahzad hit 100 and led from the front by hitting 100 of just 88 balls, right? And then Rahmat Shah scored 62. He's sort of let's say, the Dravid of their lineup. And he took some time scoring his 62, but there are hitters around him. So Asghar Khan, former captain, scored 14. Hashmatullah Shahidi, who's sort of a finisher. We will probably talk about him again later today because this guy scored 47 runs of just 48 balls. But in the end, Najibullah Zadran, the bowling all-rounder, hit out for a 60 of just 33 balls to take Afghanistan to 305. That was a really challenging total in sort of very Irish conditions where it was seam bowling heavy. And when it came their turn to bat, Ireland could not match them. So Paul Stirling gave them a strong start. He's made a 50 or 56. And Andrew Balbirnie and then Porterfield and Kevin O'Brien, they all contributed. In spite of Gary Wilson trying his best, scoring a 34, they were 179 all out. Right? Again, Gulbuddin Naib, the skipper, took a 6 for. He took 6 for 43 and sort of, led from the front in defense of the score. And therefore, the match was drawn 1-1. The series was drawn 1-1. So it was also another interesting thing that shows that Afghanistan are also sort of doing well. In the upcoming World Cup, I'm afraid, Giri, Sri Lanka may be the last or the least effective team. The way these two teams are playing, Afghanistan and Bangladesh, they may actually put Sri Lanka behind them.
People may not be playing up to their 100%. I think they're still preserving their full strength until the real tournament begins. Let's see. I mean, we have something to say about Pakistani team, for example. They are on a certain losing streak. We'll come to that in a bit, but
Indeed.
I wouldn't be surprised if teams started picking themselves up. All these teams that have been on a losing streak, they will probably start doing well when the real time comes. These are all just warm-ups, right? I mean, these really don't count. People will have forgotten this once the World Cup has begun.
Indeed.
So.
Of course. I mean, speaking of Sri Lanka, you're right. They themselves snapped as losing streak because they were also on a 8 or 9 match losing streak. If you remember, we had discussed it in the previous episode, but they snapped that against Scotland because they were also playing a 2 ODI, sort of a warm-up bilateral series there. And there, the first ODI was washed out and no ball was bowled in that match. But in the second one, it was a full match and Sri Lanka batting first made 322 for 8, right? With Avishka Fernando opening with skipper Karunaratne, Dimut Karunaratne, and they both scored very good 70s. And at number 3, Mendes scored 66. This made sure that they were very strongly placed, and Thirimanna, who was batting in the middle order, scored 44 in the end. And with some useful contributions down the order, they made 322 for 8, right? And Scotland could not chase this. And there was also some rain delays, so therefore they were given a target of 235 from 34 overs based on Duckworth-Lewis turn method. And they were 199 all out in the last over of their chase. So in the bowling, Nuwan Pradeep, who's making a comeback to the ODI squad along with Suranga Lakmal, they bowled really well, them both. So Suranga Lakmal took 2, but Nuwan Pradeep took 4. And he bowled really well in the slog overs. And I remember Dimut Karunaratne sort of making a point that I hope, Nuwan Pradeep takes some confidence out of this. And he himself, the skipper, he scored a very good 77 of a very, at a reasonable strike rate, as a strike rate of 87. So between them, I think they did well, the two openers. So I think you might be right. I might be jumping the gun when I say, Sri Lanka might not do well. And also, of course, it's a nine match round robin league, and that gives enough chances for all the teams, right? So, exactly. All right. Those were the two, let's say, bilateral series. The other bilateral series that happened was, of course, Pakistan getting warmed up in England through a 5-match ODI series. So again, Pakistan unfortunately could not do really well here because they had lost the 4th ODI where Stokes batted really well and took them home, right? And if you quickly look at the scores in the 4th ODI, Pakistan has basically made a record by becoming the first team to score a 340 plus batting first, right? Ever. But unfortunately, England kept chasing it down. So in the 4th ODI, this was the last of those 3 where they made 340. And they were able to make that on the back of 100 by Babar Azam, who made 115. And Fakhar Zaman gave a 57-run start. And then Mohammad Hafiz followed that up with a 59. And then Shoaib Malik made 41. And overall, it looked like a solid total. But, England chasing it down were in a bit of trouble. Jason Roy made 114 and James Vince made 43. So they provided them a strong start. And in the middle order, there were a bit of runs scored. Joe Root made a 36. But then the much, much wanted middle order of England could not fire. Josh Butler and Moeen Ali were out for ducks, right? Both dismissed by spinners of Pakistan. And then they were in a bit of trouble. But Ben Stokes found form timely. And along with, Tom Curran, who made a run-a-ball 30, they guided England home. This was the 4th ODI. But in the 5th one, Pakistan for a chance had to chase. So in this case, England batted first. So there again, they had solid contributions right down the top order. So James Mills made 33, Johnny Bairstow 32, Joe Root made 84, and Ian Morgan made 76. Josh Butler 34, and then Ben Stokes 21. So, and then in the end, again, Tom Curran and David Willey swung the bat a little, and they took England to 351. So again, this was a very challenging score, given that it was played in Headingley. Even though it was an afternoon match, even though it was a morning match, there was some swing in the afternoon, and the English bowlers were able to exploit it. And the openers could not provide a strong start for Pakistan. Right, Fakhar Zaman made a duck, and Abid Ali only 5. And basically, Imam Ali, who was rested for this match because of some injury, Abid Ali took his place, and they couldn't really make a good start. And Babar Azam made a fighting 80. And Sarfraz Ahmad, the skipper, made a really, really good 97. And that was scored at a strike rate of 120. But then he also had some lower order, assistants. So Asif Ali made 22, Imad Wasim 25. And then Hassan Ali and Shaheen Shafri, everybody contributed, even Mohammad Hasnain, but they couldn't get to 300, and they were 297 all out. For England, Chris Woakes bowled really well, and he took 5-4. Right? So sort of England's bowling lineup and batting lineup both look really intimidating. And the one takeaway, of course, as far as we are concerned, was Jofra Archer's really good bowling in this series. And he was not required in the last 2 ODIs because I think the England selectors had seen enough. And they wanted to give a chance to the other fighting people like David Willey, Chris Woakes, also maybe Liam Plunkett, and these people to sort of put their case forward. So as a result, he did not play in the last 2 ODIs, but I think he did really well. And I think we'll discuss this a bit later, right? So, when we look at the World Cup news, when we look at the World Cup news section, we'll probably go into it, right? All right, then. That's that. And I think let's now look at what Kanna has to say for us. All right. Going forward, we can quickly look at some of the other news section where, we can go through a bunch of news that has come out in the last week or so. So, first of all, Australia will host the first ever Women's India A Tour. So, the Women's A Tour was not really held very regularly. So, I think BCCI and CA Cricket Australia have sort of signed some deals so that they will hold this at a more regular interval. So, the first ever India A Tour of Australia, Indian Women's A Tour of Australia will begin, right? And the itinerary will be announced shortly. This is one thing. The next thing, well, the 100. If you remember this great new format of the game, 100, that is being introduced by ECB, right? There was a soft launch with a year left, right? And just before the World Cup, they wanted to capitalize on the fever pitch the fans were at, and they tried to release a poster and some promotional material for it. And this was met with a bit of derision, especially on the social media platforms. Giri, what are your thoughts on this 100? I know we've never spoken about it. It might come as a left field question for you, but what do you think of this 100?
Well, personally, I don't really care. I don't really care about this because I think it still has to be played at grassroots level, and then they need to see what happens with that. And then we can start talking about it when it really becomes a news. This is for me no news. It's we already have enough formats of cricket, and the only one we care about, as we both know, is Test cricket. So, so it doesn't make any difference to me.
I mean, basically, they are spinning it out as a way of attracting more people who are not cricket fans. But I mean, this is a longer discussion, I'm sure. But I sort of feel you hit it on the head when you said you don't care. And many seasoned cricket fans also living in England feel the same way. But, we'll see. It's still more than a year away, and they have enough time to sort of big it up and sort of introduce it to kids and make it more interesting. But we'll see. But maybe, I don't see the 100 replacing T20.
Yeah.
T20 might still be the most sought after format out there. And Test cricket, of course, because of what it offers as a challenge. But, we'll see. Maybe in 4 or 5 years' time, it may have its own presence. We'll really notice that.
I don't want it to turn out to be yet another batsman's game, high-octane entertainment provided by batsmen rather than the bowlers as well. So I hope it doesn't turn out to be one of those. But anyway, this is... we'll talk about when it is actually a big news.
Right. Now, going forward... we just hear that DRS will be introduced in the Ranji Trophy for the upcoming season, 2019, 2020.
That's amazing.
Right? So that the Indian...
Because
yeah.
Karnataka
I mean,
would have won this last season
I
had there
think so.
been
Well,
DRS.
they would have gone into the final.
Absolutely.
Let me
Yeah,
put
at
it
least.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Right?
It could.
Right. I think Chep
Yeah.
Pujara was out. You told me this off air,
Yeah.
and
That's what I wanted to make. That's the point I wanted to make. So it's good to see that Ranji Trophy has woken up to this, or BCC has woken up to this, and then realized we need DRS because it's a premier tournament in India, right? It's
Of course. That's one thing. And the other thing, well, I mean, I also remember in one of those, it might have been, I can't remember if it was in Ranji Trophy or it was in Dulip Trophy, one of the other trophies, where I remember Parthiv Patel, who was batting and who was given out, who turned to the umpire and asked, "Why are you even umpiring? Don't you see?" Or something like this. It was almost dissent, but his frustration was clear. But, when you have DRS, maybe you cannot take it out to the umpire, but just review, and get away with it. So, all right, and it also helps the players sort of get used to the system from the grassroots
absolutely,
level.
and not make blunders like sometimes Kohli does. His emotional reviews.
Indeed. Well, that won't change possibly, but some of the upcoming skippers may be better prepared. Let me put it like
That's
that.
the whole
Right?
idea. Yeah.
All right. Going further, well, I mean, speaking of Indian domestic stalwarts, Rahane, who plays for Hampshire, scored 100 for them on debut. And his 100, along with Sam Northeast's 100, ensured that Hampshire won that game. Right?
Wow.
That's nice news for us. And the other thing, I think England have split their first-class season into two parts to go around the World Cup. So as a result, Ashwin will be playing for Nottinghamshire in the second half after the World Cup. This is the other news that has come up. Again, there was a funny tweet. I think we should credit our friends from One Tip One Hand for this. So I think ICC or somebody, so not ICC, but somebody, some troll out there tweeted saying that beware Nottinghamshire non-strikers, Ashwin has been signed. And I think One Tip One Hand responded very aptly saying, beware strikers, 342 test match wickets. Right? So that's a good one from our friends from One Tip One Hand. Shout out to them. Right? All right. Going further, Irfan Pathan becomes the first Indian player to sign up for the CPL draft, the Caribbean Premier League draft, right? No news has come up whether he was ever signed up by a team, but that might follow in the upcoming days. I know the basic draft has already happened, or the first round of the draft has already happened, but this more or less indicates that first of all, I think BCCI may relax its rules and it may allow some of its Indian cricketers or ex-Indian cricketers in this case to go and play in the outside leagues. And well, he'll need an NOC, a no objection certificate, but considering that his career is more or less on the dwindle and he might never get to represent in India at the highest forms, even he's struggling to find a good Ranji team. He played for Jammu Kashmir this season, right? Even
he's forming the team there. He's actually forming the team. He's helping the local people, take up cricket as well as coaching them. He's not just a player there. So
fantastic. Yeah. No, but that's a good ending for such a career. He might still finish it on a high if he were to make it good, right? That's good. But maybe it makes sense, so that BCCI also sort of relaxes some of its regulations, and those people who are really not going to even get to play in the IPL might try to play in a different league out there. There's a Canada Pro League, there's an Afghanistan league now. There are other leagues, also Caribbean Premier League. So why not?
As I said earlier, everyone has to make a living after cricket, right? So they need to be ready for the future when the cricketing career is over. So
agree. Well, I mean, sort of Irfan Pathan is already commenting in the IPL, isn't it? He's sort of starting his career as a media pundit as well. So one never knows. Let's see. Yeah. All right. We wish him all the best, of course. And then, going further, another impactful news about BCCI has come out, that the BCCI's elections, as mandated by the Lodha reforms that made the COA and so on, is going to happen on October 22nd. And June 30th is a deadline set for all states to adopt these reforms and sort of, first of all, based on these reforms, elect their office bearers, right? By, I think it's July 30th. I'm sorry. It's July 30th, not June 30th. And then after that, October 22nd is the date that has already been set, so that officially elected committee of administrators can be elected and the COA can stand down, right? One thing I see is that since the amicus curiae, PS Narasimha, has been brought in, I think a couple of things are moving at a rapid pace. This could have happened already a year ago, but sort of the COA was in control for more than a year. We saw it. But, well, as all good things must come to pass and eventually a new system must take over, I think BCCI will now elect again, office bearers as per usual. And the COA can stand down, and we would also thank them for their job. I think they sort of brought a bit more accountability than was in transparency, right? That was completely missing. All right, then. Now we've covered most of the important news this episode. Then we can quickly take a look at the trivia question for this week. So, recently in this episode, even we were talking about West Indies losing to Bangladesh in the final of a Tri-Nation tournament, the Ireland Tri-Series, right? So, our question is based on that. So, which was the last multi-team ODI tournament that West Indies actually won? Right? So we can just look at the last one they won, but we can also discuss as a sub question, which was the one where they actually won with other member nations. So I'm already giving you a hint here, and you can easily go back a decade. I'm sorry to say that, but you can easily go back a decade and you would find your answer.
Not T20,
right?
but ODI.
ODI, yeah. Yes, that's the question. So the last major tournament they ever won was the T20 World Cup under Darren Shami. But the question is more about the ODI tournament.
Okay.
Right. All right. Now, as usual, I would also like to say thanks to our listeners and our supporters. Please listen to our podcast and discuss this with your cricket friends and make it more popular if possible. We are always having all the details in the notes section of each podcast, how you can get in touch with us. Our Twitter handle is @armchair.cricket. You can get in touch with us there, or on our Facebook page, where we put some trivia questions out, occasionally also some polls out there. You can come participate in those. Also, you can write into us at armchair.cricket@gmail.com if you have some nice ideas, if you have some nice feedback about our podcast. Also, leave us a good rating in whichever platform you listen to our podcast on, or if you want to answer our trivia questions, you could also do that either via Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Podbean. Any of these other platforms, you could also leave the answers to our trivia questions there, right? Now, having said all that, it's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from him. Bye-bye. You're listening to the Armchair Cricket Podcast.